in 20 years.
This is an evening partly of celebration. We're marking yet again the 20 years that Scotland has been in this journey to become a more compassionate, more just, more ACE-aware nation. And we're celebrating all of the actions that people on this call have taken to ensure that we achieve these goals. So let's start with a huge thank you to all of you for that. We also wanted to see all of you and hear as many voices as possible, because part of the richness of this is the range and diversity of people that have been involved and the different ways that people have taken action in different contexts and different backgrounds. So we're absolutely delighted with that. We also want to look forward, because there's no point in simply being complacent and sitting on our laurels around this. We need to think about what it is that we're going to move on to do. So absolutely delighted to have you all here, but I'm particularly delighted to have Warren Larkin here. Warren's got a terrific background, both as a clinical psychologist. He's been hugely influential in that area of work, and he now has his own company. He does lots of training and lots of international work. And we were really delighted that Warren agreed not only to be in the podcast series, but also to be at this meeting tonight. Because what I want Warren to do for us is to give us an outside perspective on Scotland and what's happened here. And Warren, I would simply ask you to unmute and give us a report card on how you see us progressing in Scotland.
Well, it's a bit of a challenge. First of all, thanks, David. Thanks for inviting me. And also, it was great to be with you and Suzanne for the podcast. Yeah, no pressure, but I think I kind of do have a bit of a broad perspective on what's going on around trauma and adversity, because it's kind of been what I've invested my life in for the last 30 years, really. So I kind of, I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to this stuff. So I think when I look at the UK anyway, I think Scotland's definitely taken a lead and shown us how things can progress and how it can be a joined up approach. I think in England, we've got no policy to point at. We've not got a coordinated programme. We've not got any government commitment to tackling childhood adversity or childhood trauma. I don't see any evidence of that. We got a statement from a government department a couple of years ago that acknowledged that this movement existed and basically repeated back some of the statements that the Scottish government had made, and also then quoted SAMHSA's definition of trauma-informed approach, which was the 4 R's, but they didn't make any reference to the fourth one, which is the respond bit. So it was kind of like, yeah, we have to recognize this as a problem. We have to realize how widespread it is. There was no mention of we must respond to this and do something about it. So I feel disappointed about where we're at in England and inspired by what you've achieved in Scotland. I think in Wales they've done some good work that's been driven by public health, but I think the kind of significant thing for Scotland is that you've got a plan for government that recognises this as a really important imperative for not just for now, but also for future generations. I think you've got the National Trauma Transformation Programme, all of the resources that go with that, all of the training that's been taking place, educating the workforce. That's part of the vehicle for change, because knowledge is power. And when people understand and see the world differently, they go about their jobs differently, and they parent differently, and they are different in the way that they go about their lives. So I think all of that knowledge transfer has been really powerful. I think, again, the guidance that's been developed by NHS Health Scotland for commissioners, for managers, for practitioners, that's fantastic, because we can open a document and go, well, what does good look like if I'm going to commission some training, or if I'm going to think about what sort of knowledge and skills my workforce need? they can look at that and get a really evidence-based perspective on it. So there's some sort of quality and fidelity going on. I think as well, you've got, if I'm not mistaken, in 2019 you had ACES questions in the Scottish Health Survey, which was fantastic. So at least you've got a sense of baseline and kind of where you're moving to. What else? I think the other things that obviously need mentioning are the ASOS Scotland program and the work that's been going on at least over the last decade, as far as I can remember. But those events, I think I've attended them. I think I've attended all of them, but I always come away feeling that when I go to these events and when I come to Scotland, I always feel welcome. I always feel part of something, part of a community, part of a community of purpose or a community of practice. But I always feel welcomed and I feel like I belong somehow. And it also feels to me optimistic because I always come away thinking stuff happens here, right? People talk to people. The barriers and structures that exist in complicated systems probably still exist, but people find ways around them. And it always feels to me like you're going to achieve things much quicker than we are in England for sure. So I always feel optimistic when I come back from Scotland. And finally, just to acknowledge that there's a cross-party group in the Scottish Parliament looking at the impacts of adverse childhood experiences, which is really, really important. I was in Houses of Parliament in England on last Monday, and it was an event about childhood trauma, about boarding school trauma. It was on a Monday because all the MPs are in the House of Commons and the House of Lords voting on bills and things like that and debating stuff. But we only had, I think, 2 MPs turn up, which was like so disappointing. We put it on a Monday specifically so MPs could be at that event, but only 2 of them made it. So yeah, it feels like you've made really significant progress and have a roadmap for where you're going to go next. I'll stop there because I'm conscious you haven't got huge amounts of time, but that's how I see things as an outsider anyway.
And I think that's really helpful, Warren. And I hope that what people take from that is a sense that progress has been made, because I think it's too easy to see the challenges and not to see the achievements. And I think getting that perspective from someone like yourself with the depth of knowledge and experience that you have is really useful. But help us.
Sorry, can I say one last thing, David? I think just to acknowledge in England, there are pockets of amazing practice. There are lots of amazing people doing amazing work like you have assembled here and in your podcast, but it just doesn't feel joined up. There's no kind of coordinating mindset. There's no kind of plan, and that's the difference, I think. So yeah, I'll just wanted to caveat. Yeah.
And I think thanks also to Simon Partridge, who's picking that up in the chat and highlighting not only the challenges of scale in England, but also some of the progress that's been made, partly inspired by Scotland. But what I was going to ask you, Warren, is help us with the roadmap. What are the things that we should be thinking about, the key actions we should be prioritising to kind of maintain and intensify the progress that's been made?
Well, thank you for asking. Clearly, I don't think you need my advice on this because I think you're already doing amazing work. But I'll give you some thoughts anyway. I think in England we need to take a lead from you, and we need a long-term national coordinated plan, and we need government that takes this really seriously and looks at the human and financial cost of adverse childhood experiences and sees that as a massive public health priority. I think we need across different countries, nationally and internationally, all people who work in public services need to have mandatory training about adverse child experiences and trauma. I think it's just like safeguarding, it's fundamental to our practice. It affects so many people. Thirdly, I think we have to apply this to the workforce as well. Looking after the people who look after the people is a priority because the workforce is in crisis across health, education, social care, policing, justice. Turnover is incredible. Burnouts become normal. And, too often the response is, oh, we'll refer them to the mental health first aider, which just locates the problem into that individual, when in fact, quite often it's the system that is broken. The overwhelming demand is unsustainable. It's not possible. the job's not doable, but yet we tell the person they have to sort themselves out or get help, when actually the workload's it's just the job's not doable, you know? So I think that's the other thing. We have to make sure that we don't normalize burnout. We look after those people by providing reflective and restorative supervision. We give them opportunities to come together as colleagues and support one another. I think that applies to managers as well, because my experience is the further you go up the management leadership ladder, the more ruthless and isolating it gets, where it's less okay to show vulnerability. I think we have to move away from diagnostic mindset and move more towards this question of what's happening to this person, or what's happened to this person. A recent study of childhood sexual abuse survivors, 608 childhood sexual abuse survivors were studied, and looked at their journeys from the point where they started experiencing abuse to the point where someone asked them and they got the right help. And the cost per survivor was £4.9 million per survivor, and almost £3 billion for that group of 608 people. And that was because they had decades of ineffective treatment, mainly because no one asked them what had happened to them. So they endured decades of hospital admissions and drugs and ECT and various labels, but no one said, what happened to you? Why are you upset? Why are you distressed? Why are you in pain? So that didn't happen. And we've demonstrated in Nottinghamshire that we can roll out routine inquiry as an approach across the whole county and sustain it for 5 years. In California, they've demonstrated routine inquiry, or ACE screening, is viable, and they've done about 3 million conversations with people in general practice and pediatrics about their experience of adversity, and then they offer them knowledge and support about how they can cope better with stress. I think we need more focus as well on positive childhood experiences. There have been a few studies that show if people have positive childhood experiences or benevolent childhood experiences at the same time as ACEs, that those positive childhood experiences mitigate the negative impact of ACEs. So actually, we can do something about that. We can't prevent all ACEs. We can prevent some, but we can also make sure that children have those positive opportunities in life, those positive adult relationships, positive peers, supportive teachers at school, feeling that they're a part of something. So I think there's a lot more we can do with that, and that feels optimistic.
And I think that's really useful, because lots of the things you're identifying are things that either have begun or are part of the journey that we're on in Scotland. And I think that's both encouraging and motivating, because we need to maintain that progress. But I think we also need to go back and say, where did we start from? And particularly, where did we start this year from? We started with a film and a story. And I'm going to ask you, Brett, to let us see part of that film and start to tell us that story.
Okay, I'll just do a share screen here.
Scotland's ACEs Journey.
Music composed and recorded by Primary 6 at Victoria Primary School, Edinburgh.
Portraits by Susanna Jeffries, an illustrator based in Edinburgh.
Graphic design by Brett Hausker of Connected Baby.
For the past 2 decades, Scotland has been on a journey. We've been trying to act on the scientific discoveries being made about adverse childhood experiences, trauma, and relationships. This video tells the story of that journey.
In early 2005, the Violence Reduction Unit is founded, based in Strathclyde Police. It is led by 2 senior members of the force, John Carnican and Karen McCluskey. They work to have violence reframed as a public health issue. Relationships are at the core of their thinking.
Later, in 2005, Harry Burns is appointed Chief Medical Officer. He talks continuously to audiences about attachment, ACEs, alienation, and the triumph of hope over despair.
In July 2007, the Scottish Violence Reduction Unit hosts a major 3-day event in partnership with the World Health Organisation's Global Campaign for Violence Prevention. Held at the Police College in Tullyallen, several hundred people attend. The speakers include Dr. Vincent Folletti, co-author of the ACE study.
The years between 2008 and 2016 have been described as a period of tilling the cultural soil. There was little public awareness of ACEs, the messages repeated by key speakers emphasising the role of relationships in human thriving were important in shifting that. This period nurtures the foundations that could give rise to a dynamic ACEs movement.
But Brett, you've been involved directly with this work for a long time, and you've been absolutely essential in terms of lots of the technical work that goes on behind it. Would you like to just tell us a wee bit about what it's like to have created all of these resources and to be able to use your skills in the way that you have?
Yeah, thank you. I guess being in the background, even I don't appreciate what I managed to get through, but it has been a learning curve producing both this film and also the book that came with it. Was a bit of a learning curve because there were quite a lot of things which I wasn't quite prepared for. But it's if you're somebody who can sort of learn on the job, then you just take it all in. But it was remarkable, the number of people that we got involved in it, the number of people who took part in it. It was really a groundswell of enthusiasm and people just wanting to be part of it. Even the music was created, as you saw on the titles, by one of the schools, a primary 6. I mean, the thing really was a magnificent joint effort. I was the person that put it all together and made it look nice. It was a lot of people had to make it work.
But I think one of the things that I love about you is the fact that when I thanked you for the contribution that you made around the podcast, you came back and instead of accepting the thanks, you offered your thanks back because it's given you the opportunity to use these skills for something that you clearly consider to be a worthwhile end. And I think we owe you a debt of gratitude for that, Brett. And it's delightful to hear what it's meant to you.
I have to say, there's not many graphic designers who get to help thousands of people through their work. And that's what is so gratifying with this work, is that I know it goes out there and people get something out of it and it helps them. So that's just brilliant. I mean, it's not like designing a soap packet. I mean, this is really good stuff.
Well, thank you for that. And I think one of the things that you've worked on was the podcast series Taking Action.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to say a bit about that. We've managed to do 30 episodes. We've got lots of people here who've been involved in the episodes. And for me, it's been the most astonishing experience. There has been nothing that has given me such a sense of hope and optimism as being part of this has. To speak to people like Thomas, who will be talking to us later, was just a joy. I loved the fact that there's somebody who takes on a couple of children coming out of difficult circumstances, and when they start to encounter challenges in school or whatever, simply says, what can I do to make their life better? And while I'm at it, what can I do to make other young people's lives better? And then gets ahead and does that. And I've picked out Thomas because he was here. I could have picked out anyone. Suzanne Scott's here, somebody who has done the most astonishing work in terms of getting parents involved and engaged. Danny and Lisa Gemmell, who've done the work around Being Unity, who have set up amazing support systems for veterans and for others, but who've taken it beyond that, who are reaching out to schools. We've got people that haven't been on yet. Laurie Ellis, who will be talking to us later, who is taking this awareness into the world of sport. It's just been an astonishing experience in terms of giving us that wider picture. So again, it's been marvellous to engage with people. I see Ian Smith here as well, but Danny Gemmell was somebody who really inspired me when I interviewed him on the podcast. And Danny, I'd like you to come in and just say a bit about the experience of being on the podcast from your point of view. And what I'd also like you to do is to share with people how you felt having listened to all of the podcasts. So can you just give us some of these insights, Danny?
Aye, thanks, David. I think being part of the podcast was pretty special for us. We've been open. This is actually our 5th year, so we're 5 this year. And what we're not actually too good at is being able to like showcase maybe some of the initiatives that we've got running, whether that be working with educators in schools, businesses, running bothies and support systems for young people, and then the veteran support network that we've got. And it's just nice to be able to share that story from that point all the way through to where we're at just now. But actually listening to the podcasts was, again, it was just like it really just affirms what it is that you're doing. So I think a lot of people sometimes struggle with imposter syndrome. And I'm one of them at times. I think, what fucking right have I got to be talking about this in front of thousands of people? And then all of a sudden you realise actually like not many people really know what they're doing, but they've got a good idea of, I'm going to try it and see if it works. One more recent podcast with John Carnican, he actually says it in his podcast. He's talking about standing on a stage and he gets this like knot in his stomach thinking somebody's going to ask me a question. And it was just nice to know that somebody who we've taken a lot of inspiration from still gets that wee bit of, I don't really know if we're doing the right thing, but we're going to go for it anyway.
And I'm delighted to hear that, Danny, because I'm not in any doubt at all that you and Lisa are doing the right thing and have done the right thing. And it was an absolute pleasure to be able to share that with you. So really delighted around that. And thanks for your comments and thanks for your contribution tonight. I'm going to step aside now because the real Suzanne Zeedyk has returned. I know that we've admitted that she was delayed by train. I was using another excuse. Anybody that's been following Suzanne's online activity will know that she's currently obsessed with traitors. I was going to tell everybody that she was auditioning to take over from Claudia Winkleman. And as far as I'm concerned, maybe sooner the better. But I'm going to welcome Suzanne, not cloaked, but uncloaked, and let you introduce us to the latest film that Brett's been involved in. So Suzanne, over to you.
David, thank you. It is lovely to be here. I'm going to say thank you to ScotRail for getting me here eventually. And can I say, I don't want to be Claudia Winkleman. I want to be Ed Gamble. Does the Uncloaked series afterwards. And for anybody who is new to that joke, it is true. I have been talking about traitors. And that's because I think it has lots to show us about relational dynamics. And if it's an opportunity for people to understand where the impacts of ACEs come from, I think we need to take every single one of those opportunities. So I am delighted to be here with us. And David, maybe you and I will just co-chair this for the rest of it, since you have kicked us off to exactly the start that was needed. But right now, let's see if we can get this film to play, because this is the film that we wanted to premiere in order to bring the podcast to a really wonderful, cohesive whole. And I hope that we can hear the music that is behind this. And once again, Brett has put this film together. And if we can't hear the music because we're online, we'll just go ahead and let it play anyway. But let's hope it will all flow so that we can see once again the brilliance of Brett's House Goes work.
Thank you for joining Taking Action, the podcast that tells the stories that we hope will make a difference. This is part of a celebration of the 20 years that we've spent in Scotland, trying to bring more compassion, more awareness, more sense of the impact of trauma and adverse childhood experiences into public awareness. These stories are told by people who are actually doing something and genuinely making the ambitions of ACE awareness a reality. What action would you like people to take who've listened to this podcast? What is it that you would like people to do as a result of hearing you today?
I would like them to get really curious about some of these relational concepts, but also just to know that, change happens because people decide to make it happen, and that just having that little bit of confidence to take things forward can make a really big difference in communities and in the lives of children.
What I would like people to do is just recognise that sometimes people are struggling even when they've got their mask on, and just reach in.
Not being frightened to do things, because often that fear is the one thing that stops us from doing anything.
And if you can understand, if you can look at your own behaviours and do work to find out why you behave the way you do, you're going to be able to support the people around you in any profession, in any way of life.
What I think we just want is children to be happier, enjoy childhood, and actually, do really well as human beings, but giving them that time to do that. Once parents actually start to think about, and even better if they can see the benefits, it's a bit of a no-brainer.
I would like people to understand and believe in themselves that they can make positive change. So I would say, have your ideas and dream.
Don't forget the power of the creative arts to help you get through all this. You are not alone, but the power of dance, music can sometimes just be transformative.
For me, trauma awareness is in part about curiosity, about treating everyone kindly, I guess, not to be too soft in it. If you're, I guess, kind to people, they're often kind back.
I'd like them to ask themselves what they can do to keep the promise. And once they've asked themselves and answered that question, just do it. Just get on with it.
Enable your staff to get exposure to the many amazing thinkers and experts we've got in Scotland. We're so fortunate to have so many people who can really add value to this debate.
I just hope that we're just inspiring the next generation, whether it's the next generation of teachers, because that would be awesome. I want teaching to be reflective and representing our society and our communities.
I think when we think about behaviour, particularly in school settings, I would like people to look at each situation as what if this was a can't, not won't situation, because I think too often we assume that children won't do what we want, and actually sometimes they can't.
I would say that the first action is follow your heart and be brave about that. Don't be frightened to ask yourself what might have happened to this person.
If you have information about something that happened to you or something that happened to somebody else, and it's been sitting there, even if it's for decades, speak to Police Scotland. It is very important. They might have other people being questioned at the moment. They might have open cases. Your information might save someone else.
Are we asking the right questions about these data? Are there things we still need to know about? We really want to know from people if we're asking the right questions or not.
Write, draw, paint, sing, dance, do all of those things, because the creative arts is so fundamentally important for our health and for our mental health. You need no reason to do any of these things. You just need to want to give it a go.
More and more, I had become concerned around a lack of moderate dialogue, moderate conversation. There's not enough conversation with people that we disagree with.
Just make small changes and then you just continue on that journey. It only needs to start with one small thing. And it needs to be tailored to your context. Although we all work together, there are similarities, but there are real differences. And so it's making sure you meet the needs of your own context.
And I think being curious about behaviour and being that emotion detective, just always trying to be thinking what's going on here and trying to find a solution.
Just take a minute and to just breathe and to just don't react, because we're all reacting all the time and we don't let our brains come back online and think about whether this is the best course of action. Just take a minute, stop, don't respond, breathe first. And choose to come from that calmer place where your brain is online and you can think more clearly.
Just spread the word as much as you can. I'm working with some fantastic young people. Just give these young people a chance. That's what I think.
The other thing I'd like is for parents who are considering boarding school for their own children. I'd like them to stop and think, talk, read widely, ask schools the difficult questions, and make sure that you are doing the very best for your children through that choice. And if you're not confident you can do it yourself, then there's so many organisations can help.
The one thing they could do is write to their MP, or not just their MP, their local councillor, and say, this is something we think you should be providing in this council, or in this region. That's a simple thing to do.
Just back to people's stories, sharing them, and just getting back to the grassroots of things. Sometimes we need to take a wee step back before we can really move forward on stigma and racism, any of these points.
Trust that there are processes and good things going on. Sometimes things aren't the way that we would want them to be, but there are attempts to explore that, to think about what's feasible within the capacity constraints that we have.
I think most importantly it's about being kind to each other, being respectful, working well together and looking after yourself. And I think these are the absolute take-home messages.
I always recommend that people go back to the 5 principles trauma-informed practice. So where and when you can put those principles of safety, trust, collaboration, empowerment and choice into practice, do it.
If you're asking the question why, you're willing to be informed and educated. You're not going in with, right, I've got all the answers.
Sorry to say that, David, but until we get to start dealing with the root problem, I can only see it getting worse.
Look after the people who look after the people. Otherwise, service is just going to decline. Wait times are going to get longer. Continuity is going to be terrible. We're just not going to be able to do what people need.
I would like them to appreciate the power of stories. If we talk about what we do and we talk about what other people are doing, then that empowers people to take action. It's just telling stories. We are built to tell stories as human beings. Let's not take them for granted.
I suppose to take time to understand, to also feel curious about the world. And actually that's the only thing that matters really, because if you're not, then it's all snap judgments and, and we just need to consider what else it could look like and their part in it.
Yeah, much the same. I mean, I think what's really important is to listen to other people, and be an optimistic cynic.
There are signs that Scotland is making changes and making a major effort to become more compassionate. So grateful for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
Thanks, David. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
God bless you, mate.
Thank you so much for inviting me on. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely wonderful. And can I say about the thanks at the end is a real hallmark of the quality of the people that we had on the podcast. The fact that they were thanking me for doing nothing more than giving them the opportunity to share some of the really wonderful and remarkable things that they had done. That just speaks to Danny's imposter syndrome, to their modesty, to their humility. And the great thing about that is that the message that puts out is, we can do it. We can do it. We can take action. We can make a difference. And the coming together of Warren's messages from a kind of external and academic perspective with the views that were expressed by people who are actually doing things on the ground here in Scotland, that was a joy to hear, because we are in the right direction. We just need to make sure that we don't just travel, that we also arrive. And part of that, I think, is the celebration of what we've achieved, and that's been done through the Gala Day that was part of this year's celebration. And Suzanne, you were instrumental in that. So can I pass over to you to link us into this section about the Gala Day?
It's such a delight to go from that summary of the podcast, and again, can I stress that's Brett's work, to then think about how it then transitions into live work, which is what the Gala Day was. In June, we held a Gala Day co-hosted with Anam Alba, in which we brought together all sorts of speakers who simply came to a day to talk about what they were doing to address ACEs. And so we thought that tonight we would bring two of those people. That we could have chosen a whole range of people, but given that you will all want to go home sometime this evening, we've just pulled two folks out. So one of our speakers at that event was Amanda Kearney. She runs the holding space, and I'm hoping that Amanda is on this screen somewhere. Amanda, would you come forward and tell us what it was like to speak at that Gala Day?
Hi. First of all, thank you so much for having us, for having me, and having the holding space on as well. It's such a privilege to kind of be on with everybody that's kind of on the same journey and trying to kind of do the same thing, I suppose. So the Gala Day was absolutely brilliant. I went a long way. My colleague, friend, Chloe, and we absolutely loved it. I'm much like Danny was saying, we're quite a new organisation, so we've only been registered 3 years next month. We were kind of running before that, but we got registered with Oscar in 3 years next month. So it's all kind of new to me, third sector, all kind of new. My background statutory, I was in social work for 13 years, and then wanted to leave to create an organisation that, it's not a slight on social work if there's any social workers in it, I know how hard the job is. But it's more, that was more crisis intervention, whereas I wanted to create an organisation that was more about early intervention and preventative stuff.
Yep.
And then going along to the Gala Day, it was so lovely to kind of engage with so many different inspirational people that have pretty much what I was saying was, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I just had this idea what I wanted to do and went, right, well, let's follow the breadcrumbs and see where we end up. And it was so lovely to kind of engage with lots of different people and really find out where they kind of started, where their kind of passion lies, and and it just felt really like connection is massive for me. So it felt like in the room, it was like everybody was like connecting. And with ACEs and trauma informed practice, when you kind of boil right down to it, it's all about relationships. And I think it's so important for all of us that are all in the kind of trying to kind of do the same job, have that kind of same relationship and connection as well. So it was so lovely to kind of go, oh, I didn't know, like, because a lot of the times we don't even know what's out there. So it was so lovely to find out about the different services and being able to refer our families and young people to different kind of organisations as well. And it's just like a big ACEs cake, and we're all bringing different ingredients to it. So I was like, yes. Somebody that's bringing the flour, like, it's so daunting to try and do it all together. I like to do it yourself, so it's so lovely that there's so many different people trying to kind of do the same thing, I suppose. So yeah.
Amanda, you've said that so beautifully. It's like a big ACEs cake, and that we all know we are making together.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to do this stuff alone. In fact, it's impossible to do this stuff alone. So one of our hopes for the Gala Day is that people would feel that there is a community and that it extended far beyond the bounds of that room. But in being in that room together, it just reinforced all the different ways that we are doing this and all the different voices that are in it. So one of the other people that was there and would have been listening to Amanda on that day is Tess Hamilton. And Tess, you come to us tonight from Addywell Prison, where the Cyrenians support lots of the work in that prison, and you got to attend that day. Would you tell people what it was like to attend the Gala Day?
I will. First things first, I am going to start with something that Suzanne Scott said in her podcast, breathe. So I need to breathe. This isn't my normal thing that I would speak to a lot of people like this. I do like to talk about the ACE stuff at every opportunity, and going along to the Gala Day event, I went along with my colleague Leslie, who's in here somewhere. It was just a really good way to meet people that are at the same place as you in terms of that what we want to do. What I felt from the day was I got real warmth in the room. Everybody in attendance was chatting, and it was like you'd known them all your life, which is great if you're Scottish, because that's all you ever do is just talk. It gave me a sense of belonging, something that I feel that I've missed in my life until I discovered this route and found out where it needs to be. Everything that I took from that day, every conversation I had, every relationship I've built from there gives me hope for the future of Scotland. I think these events are really, really important because it's about us tackling it as a nation, tackling the adversity that faces children and actually making it different for the next generation that's coming along and the generation after that. I'm going to finish up by saying I just want to offer gratitude to everybody that was there, and my new band of brothers, as I would call them, that were all there to fight the same fight and look after this beautiful country that I call home. That's me.
Tess, I just wanted to say how beautifully you've said that. So between the two of you, Amanda and Tess, it gives lots of people who were not there a sense of what happened at that Gala Day, and the idea that we can celebrate what we've been doing and the action that has been taken and the grassroots energy of people just stepping forward and deciding to do something with the knowledge that they have gained about childhood trauma, the science of connection, the lasting impact of ACEs. And we wanted it to be inspiring both on that day and to ripple out beyond. So thank you so much for sharing the stories of that day. There is a film about the Gala Day. You can find that on the YouTube channel, and we'll put that out again in the same way that you can share the film of the podcast that we've now launched tonight. So if that is one of the events that was held this year, a second event that was held in September, again with the partnership of Anam Alba from folks that we will meet just a little bit later in today's celebration. Another of the events that we put on was something even edgier than a gala day. We put on an event called The Long Shadow of Shame in Scottish Culture, as a way of starting to try to explore the shame that often comes with ACEs and that often is not talked about, and the long-term impacts of shame, particularly if you live in a culture where shame is woven into a lot of the way that you see and do things, and we may not realize that. So we put on an event to try to explore that. And one of the people who was one of the table leaders for that event is Lisa Gemmell. Lisa, would you come and tell us what it was like to be a table leader at an event on shame and what you began to take from the comments of lots of the people in the workshops?
Yeah, first of all, it was just an amazing to be a part of that big day. I loved hearing everybody's understanding of what shame actually meant to them, and the impact it had on their personal lives and their communities that they all came from, because everyone came from different parts of Scotland. I don't know why I was a table lead, because my handwriting's terrible, but we had really good discussions around the term shame and how it impacted everyone, and even into their normal kind of conversations. You know, nobody really had an understanding of how to bring it up and how to talk about it, so it just became something you could chat about to normal people. My biggest take from the day, I would say, was being brave enough to step into curiosity and being brave enough to know that shame has only got power when you don't talk about it, when you hide it. We all had the encourage to empower ourselves and discuss it, where nobody came from a judgmental background or whatever. Everyone just came with their genuine selves, and I think the authenticity really shone through on the table and throughout the whole conference. As part of Being Unity, myself and Lee work a lot with young people, and it gave me a wee bit of encouragement to actually use the word shame, because I would probably first admit that I'd be one of those people that would be teetering about it. And that's really gave me a big kind of grounding and actually being able to open up with my young people and talk about what shame is to them and, you know, how they overcome it. Because if somebody taught me that at age 12, 13 or 14, I probably wouldn't have needed to have learned as much as I've learned as an adult. And that might have made my life a little bit easier growing up. So yeah, I think that I just want to say a massive thanks for everyone that was vulnerable at the gala day, and I really appreciate being a part of it.
Lisa, you've just said that really powerfully. We often can't even say the word shame, let alone talk about what it is and how it feels, which is exactly why we wanted to have an event to look at it and to think about whether or not we should host that again and take it out more widely in the country. One of the reasons that that question applies is because one of the people who was there was Laurie Ellis. And Laurie, I think you'll be on this screen somewhere. And Laurie will tell us himself maybe that it was the very first ACES event he had been to. And Laurie, we were all very excited when Laurie walked through the door, because Laurie comes from the sector of football. He works with Hearts Academy with young people, and we hadn't had football people walk through the door of an event yet. But Laurie, welcome to the community. You have jumped in with both feet. Please tell us what it was like to be at that day and what you did with it afterward.
Thanks, Suzanne. Hello, everyone. Well, first of all, I certainly don't feel qualified to be speaking about ACES, and all the kind of work that you guys have done is brilliant for me to start learning about. I've been aware of it for quite a long time, but we've kind of worked together with Suzanne and to dip into it a little bit deeper recently. So my name's Laurie Ellis. I'm currently the head of academy coaching at Heart of Midlothian Football Club. I've been within football my whole life, and I've always been aware of the correlation between well-being and feeling good and comfortable and performance. So since, you know, speaking to Suzanne, I've realised that sport has been one of the sectors that maybe has been touched a little bit by different people in the movement, but certainly Suzanne really felt that it was a sector that she would like to add to and to bring a little bit more awareness to. So I've been pleased to tie up with Suzanne. So I think David mentioned bringing a connection of bringing a connection to the world of sport. And I think it's really important from, before I go about the shame of it, my experiences of varying football environments, it's really fast moving, it's really intense. And over the last 4 years, my work has involved academy work. So we've got a remit between of helping coaches that are working with children between 8 and sort of 18, 19 at the older age groups. So a really vast sort of range of different periods of a young person's life. And we've got some really healthy, fantastic people in the building, young people in the building. We've also got some people that do need a little bit of support. And so hopefully we're trying to bring a bit more of that to everyone. So I think that the main things, the main awareness things or things that I took from the shame event. So I didn't really know what we were stepping into, but I'd been aware of Suzanne's work for a long time. My wife's a nurture teacher, or is a biology teacher, but the last 10 years has worked within nurture and support for learning. So we've spoken loads about loads of similarities. And I think from the shame event, we took 2 colleagues along, and the three of us have spoken about loads since. And some of the things that we took away were about blame and humiliation being inherent in our society. And within competitive sport, you can imagine it's competitive, and there's a lot of deflection, a lot of blame, a lot of humiliation at all different age groups. And that feeling of we've got made more aware of the push back, held back, push forward, held back kind of thing within that topic. So I see that all the time, and these were little flickers that came up in my head that were, we would celebrate a good thing that a young person does. And I'm not talking about us personally, but just in general in the football world. So we'll celebrate something that a young person does. And don't get ahead of yourself. You just sit back down again, or they'll maybe be critical of something that they've done in the same moment, just to pull them back a little bit. And so these things really resonated with me. Things like body language from the shame workshop, talking about looking at body language of a young person and starting to unravel someone's individual journey or their individual story. Really, we could really make contact with that within an academy setting. And Suzanne spoke about attachment theory as well, and we invited Suzanne into the academy to give us a bit more insight into relationships and connection. And attachment theory and the rupture repair cycle was something that we spoke about a lot of when she visited the academy.
So, Laurie, all of that shows just how much people can take, how much insight and depth people can take, even if they're just stepping into this. It's such a delight to know that that is what came for you from coming to a single event, and that Lisa was able to help knit those insights together. And one of the other speakers at that event was Carol Craig, who could not be here tonight, but she really knitted together how shame applies to Scotland. So thank you to both of you, Lisa and Laurie, for helping others who might not have been at that event to have some sense of what went on there. And again, there's a film which Brett put together which gives you some sense of what happened, and all of you can have a look at that film to gain a sense of how it felt.
And I would just like to point out that it's absolutely no coincidence at all that since Laurie and the Academy became interested in aces, Hearts have been topping the league. That's the power. That's the power of ace awareness. We are looking at the possible end to Old Firm domination as a result of Laurie and his colleagues engaging with Suzanne Zeedyk and going to an event about shame. Laurie, you have turned the football world upside down. Well done to you, mate. We're very, very proud of you. I also want to pick up on a comment that's been made in the chat about people coming on and saying, well, I don't really feel qualified to speak about that. And what our colleague is pointing out is you bloody well are. Absolutely. And one of the things that we said at the start of the evening, we've got a lot of voices here. We need all of them. Yes. And it doesn't matter whether you're soprano or baritone or whether you're on bass, doesn't matter. We need the voices, we need the activity, we need the areas of it. And we need the range of activity that we've seen this year. And one of the things that we've seen has been a regular newsletter which has come out. And I'm going to ask a couple of people to speak about that. I'm going to ask Davy MacArthur, who has written a book about the mushroom clan. I'm very excited to hear more about that, Davy, if you've got time to go into it. I'm familiar with the mushroom theory of development, where we keep everybody in the dark and throw some shit on them every now and again. But I'm sure that's not what your book's about. So I'd like you just to talk a bit about being featured in the newsletter, Davy.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me, Suzanne and David. But when Suzanne put that article about me in the ACE's newsletter last year, it wasn't the first time I'd been in the spotlight. Through my charity work and support groups, I've stood up in front of people many times, but this felt different this time. It wasn't about organising something or helping others, it was me being seen. And for someone who kept the hardest parts of his life hidden for decades, that was unexpected and healing. It reminded me that when we share our stories safely, they stop being shadows, they become lanterns for others still trying to find their way. My imagination has always been that lantern for me, the place I escaped to when life felt too heavy, and the place I still go to make sense of things. And I'd like to, if you don't mind, I'd like to share a short poem that captures who I am and that part of my journey, and I hope it encourages others to use their creativity to travel through time, back to understand, forward to heal, and into the present to breathe again. The name of the poem is My Imagination. I had this compulsion for writing. It changed my life, it changed my world. Now it's so exciting. Creating people, places, towns, cities, worlds that never existed. I've walked along the bottom of the deepest seas. I've seen fish and serpents that no one else has seen. I've been a king, yes, and sometimes as queen. I have visited Mars, frequented its bars and drank martinis and watched the Earth go round. I fly to planets made of smarties with crowds of smarty people, multitudes of different colours. No one here is hungry, no one here is poor, no one here is bad, and no one here is sad. Ladies wear fancy dresses, yes, you've guessed it. The men wear smarty pants. I have danced with Ginger Rogers when she knocked back Fred Astaire. I've been on stage with Elvis and Frank Sinatra too. I have stood to a standing ovation when they only got a boo. I've marched with Caesar's army, I've fought with Genghis Khan, defeated armies all around us, then we played kick the can. I marched into Nazi Germany with an army of 6 million tortured Jews. We arrested Hitler and his generals and displayed them in the zoos. I've made rich men poor, I've made poor men rich. I've conned the greatest conmen and left them without a stitch. I think by this time you've got the gist. Life can be nice, imagination and writing add the spice. So if you're down and feeling sad, switch on your imagination, pick up a pen and a writing pad, walk through a wonderland, travel on the Orient Express. No telling where that will take you and give you a well-earned rest. No matter who your God is, no matter what your faith, always make time to pray. Thank God for your imagination. Yes, do that every day. Yeah, imagination helped me survive long before I had the words to explain what had happened to me. And today, through my writing, especially Drop Me Mushroom, as David mentions there, Drop Me Mushroom book up. Hopefully that'll be out in May this year. It'll be launched in May. So I'm reaching out to children and adults in the book who have lived through abuse or trauma, who are still carrying it quietly. These stories aren't just entertainment, they're a way of saying, I see you, you're not alone, and healing often begins when you speak to someone we trust. So if my story or my imagination, or even a wee mushroom man with a good heart can help someone feel seen, then stepping into that spotlight was worth it.
Davy, you've done two things brilliantly. One, you've illustrated how important it is to have the newsletter, communicating and sharing. But you've also talked about creativity and imagination, which is something that's not been touched on often enough within the ACES movement. And there wasn't just one newsletter, there was also a cultural newsletter which highlighted lots of activities, lots of productions, lots of exhibitions that illustrated Scotland's relationship with adverse childhood experiences and the efforts being made to deal with them. So very grateful to you for that, Davy, and we'll look forward to reading the book when it comes out.
Thanks very much, David. Thank you.
And can I now bring in Thomas, House of Cisse, Thomas, whom, as people will know from my earlier comments, is a bit of a hero of mine. I love not only what Thomas has done and achieved, but I love the humility. He's the man that still can't believe anyone wants to listen to him waff on. So as a reward for that, Thomas, we're giving you another chance to waff on. The floor's yours, Thomas.
Thank you. So my name's Thomas Cisse. I run an organisation called House of Cisse. So basically what we do, we deliver SQA qualifications to care experienced young people. And I was asked to be a part of the podcast with David. Obviously he knows that I like to waffle on, but I have to say, I think David waffles on more than me, which is great. So I think it's great for this community to connect with people. And we've got what I do in my job is I connect with these young people and try and change that ACEs negative connotation into a positive connotation, and we work on a lot of positive mindset and how we can fight the ACEs and not end up to be a statistic. So it was absolutely mind-blowing for me to meet David and then to waffle together, which was great. I don't really have too much to say. I'm early to this community, but it's an absolute pleasure to be asked to do this. I think that I've only been with the community a couple of months, so looking on like celebrating 20 years, that's pretty impressive. So I'm just looking forward to like what's next for this community.
And we're looking forward to sharing that with you, Thomas. As I say, I was really proud to have you on the show. And really great to have you here with us tonight. And the person I'm about to bring in now is somebody that I'm also very proud to be engaging with, and that's Jerry Diamond. Jerry's going to talk about brain development training, which he undertook. Jerry's based at Clydebank High School. He's a real force to be reckoned with in the world of adverse childhood experiences and education more generally. He's also instrumental in the Clydebank Learning Festival, which I think has run twice. And we're seriously hoping that it'll run again. But Jerry, can we ask you just to come in and talk a bit about the contribution that you've been making to this year of celebration?
Evening, everybody. Thanks for that introduction there, David. Yes, I ran an event, I think it was about October, September time, to bring again people together from all over actually, because it went pretty global. We end up with people from Toronto, Quebec, Chicago, the length and breadth of England, Ireland, Dublin, with a really global attendance. And I put 100 tickets out at the beginning, and I had to put another 100 out. So we ended up with I think we ended up with about 250 people attending. So it was pretty remarkable. And the feedback that I really got for the event was I could be here really to the end of our session tonight with the feedback I've got. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just read out some of the feedback I got from people who attended the ACES event. So I'll start with this one. I really appreciate how much useful information you shared. Your use of real-life examples and recent research made the topic feel relevant and engaging. It helped me understand the complex relationships between trauma and brain function in a new way. The event was absolutely brilliant, makes perfect sense. We need you in every educational setting, everywhere. Your event was brilliant. As an adoptive mum and a teacher in a school, I thought it was spot on. It has really made me reflect on my own responses. Understanding the brain is so important. So thank you so much. I would love to hear any of your events in the future. 3 more to go, David. The event was great and the time flew by. I was gripped listening to how you put the learning into practice. Hi, Jerry. Thank you again for such a powerful presentation. The work you do should be shared worldwide. Now, this one, I was absolutely over the moon with this one. So I'm going to finish with this bit of feedback here. As always, absolutely phenomenal learning from you. And I just can't wait until the next one. Our very own Scottish Bruce Perry.
Well done, Jerry. If that doesn't cure imposter syndrome, I've no idea what does. Brilliant feedback, brilliant effort, and wonderful to reach so many people. So yeah, hats off to you, and thanks for all the work that you do. I'm now going to pass back to Suzanne to introduce the next section, which is around our plans for 2026. Suzanne.
I'm delighted to talk about 2026, but just for a second, I want to pull together some of what we've just seen. To state the obvious, are not the breadth of voices amazing? Is it not astounding to think that all of these people are doing things because they stepped forward, because they could see a need? That's the strength of the grassroots movement for me of Scotland, which is built up over the last 20 years, step by step by step. And what we have wanted to do over this year is to shine a light on that, to tell people that there is a story to tell, and to help people to know what the details of that story are so that we can tell it to others. Some people here tonight are from other places, either beyond our southern border or perhaps across the oceans. It's helpful to them to know what we have been doing over this year, and that thinking about ACEs can be celebratory in terms of action rather than depressing and worrying in the frame in which trauma is sometimes talked about. So I am so delighted that all of you have spoken already. And if we use that as a transition to turn to think about where we might grow this next year, it is a pleasure to bring in Fiona Larkin from Animalba, whom you have already heard us say several times this evening. Animalba has been a key partner in helping to put on events and to bringing that creative focus that you've already mentioned, David, that is not always present in some other ACEs movements, but in Scotland, we are increasingly growing a sense that the creative arts is crucial to the way we can approach this topic. And Animalba is taking a really lead role in that. Fiona, please welcome to the party. Would you just tell people who Animalba is and a bit about what you do, and then help people to know what we have started to talk about that can happen next year?
Certainly. Thank you so much, Suzanne. It's just really lovely to be here and to hear about all the things that we have collectively done in the last year. And I was thinking the main reason that tonight and all those things were joyful is because the company's been great. Seeing everybody's face on screen, and the new people that have essentially come into our lives because of this movement is wonderful. So just before I give people an idea of some of the things that might be coming up, myself and Siobhan, who's on screen as Shivy, and Frankie somewhere are my colleagues from Animalba. And we're only one group among many who have made use of the ACEs information. A long time ago, a lot of that information legitimated a lot of the challenges that there were in both work and our personal lives, because essentially everything is relational. It doesn't matter if you're at home or if you're in your office or in your school. It's the relationships that make meaning about what you're doing and how you're living. So Animalba, eventually after COVID, was really just a way of us formalising work that had been happening for years amongst a small group of us. And it partly came out of thinking there isn't any point in just knowing all this stuff. You've got to find a way to be able to live it. And it was also a response to loneliness that got way out of hand, that started from maybe singing to my dad through a window in a care home, and then ending up with other families saying, can you move one room along and sing a song to them? Can you move one room along and sing a song to them? So if you imagine Anna Malba kind of works, if you imagine a really big, massive kitchen table in a kind of imaginary room, where a healthy, well-functioning, biologically, physically healthy, sound family are able to gather round, where everybody is fed, where everybody has shelter, and where it doesn't matter what age you are, what category of person you are, what nationality you are, there aren't any there's not a tick box of a kind or type of person that you need to be in order to be round that table. The only thing that you actually need is the desire to join in. And if you think about a really healthy family around a table, you have time where you share together, you come and you tell of all your experiences out in the world, you eat together, you sing together. If you need help, you've got people there you can ask for help. So if you imagine that kind of on a bigger scale, that is in some sense what Anna Malba hopes to be. And actually, listening to everybody tonight, I think we're actually a small version of this bigger ACES movement. I think that ACES movement, as it's been grassroots growing, has kind of encapsulated all those things as well. And of course, round that table, when everybody begins to share their story, inevitably your own story starts in childhood. So when people start telling stories, and everybody, I'm sure, here tonight will have experiences where they've stopped to listen to somebody, and in the hearing of the story's gone all the way back to when they were little, and you think, so the childhood experiences, all childhood experiences matter. And I'm thrilled to be part of a movement where everybody is concerned about what childhood is like in Scotland. And the main thing that we recognise, of course, is that we can't do any of this by ourselves. You're not isolated. We need each other. And I've got a really personal interest in how our stories are carried in our own bodies, how our biology works. And I generally look to biology and nature when I want to find direction for myself. And recently, actually, I looked up the root and the origin of the word community. And in my head, I was kind of thinking commune, maybe it means to connect. That's kind of where my mind was going with it. And I actually discovered that the word community means to serve. It doesn't actually mean connect, it means to serve. And so I think that really means that we all do our own part, but we serve each other for the sake of the greater good. And in your body and in nature, nature does that automatically. So when there is health, then everybody automatically understands what their own part is, but they also understand simultaneously that they're connected to something bigger and that we all work together, and there is synergy in that. So the sum of all those parts is actually a greater thing. And that's really why Anna Malba has been always connected to and interested in the ACES movement. And I think the more that we orientate towards the relationships that we have here, or the things that when we tell the stories of all the amazing things that people here are doing, then we automatically invite in health and well-being. All those things are there for us. So over the last 5 years, we have been really delighted to have connected to people here. The Shame Conference was terrific, and the Little Iceberg musical going to the Fringe was terrific, and having just a lot of the connections with people in here and being able to collaborate, all of that has been really fun to do. And there's been a lot of soup made by Frankie over that time. So essentially, we are still focused on stories, on our personal stories and our collective stories, because that's probably the way that we will change the country. We don't need to sit and wait for Parliament to pass some new kind of ruling I don't think that will make the change. I think we will make the change. And we all play our own tiny part in that, probably with a lot of trepidation a lot of the time. I know that I spend a lot of my time thinking, yeah, I can't keep up with this. I haven't got back to people. I think I'm always apologizing, all of those things. But I don't think that matters when you're part of a group that you feel you have some sense of belonging with.
So tell us what we're going to do
next year.
Fiona.
Yes, the excitement. So there's always the possibility that we can do more pegs and more things around shame, especially Suzanne, because you are so delighted to make people feel uncomfortable and you think that shame is a marvelous word, but it is quite seriously like something that is prevalent in Scottish culture and was incredibly interesting to look at. We are hoping in North Lanarkshire and Cumbernauld to co-host with yourself a book festival, because of course in North Lanarkshire many people will never have had a opportunity to go to the Edinburgh Fringe, to go to a book festival. So if we're able to bring a book festival to them that is relevant to their lives, because it touches on ACEs and all the different aspects of it throughout our justice system or our care system or all of those areas, then I think that would be an incredible achievement. So I think we have a date with the Lantern House for September.
Yes,
and again, we're really happy that it's in the Lantern House because they've had trouble with their funding, and it's really important that we keep the creative arts alive. We also, what are the other things that we are doing, Suzanne?
Thinking about having an online conversation series.
Oh, yes. That's
called
right.
How to Say No to the System.
Yes.
Ooh.
And yes, and actually, Suzanne, you had not quite arrived earlier on when Warren was talking about the fact that it's actually really difficult in the middle of the lives that we're leading in this modern world to actually cope with everything, and that actually coping with more is not the answer. So how actually do we change that? How do we get to a stage where we say, okay, I'm not doing that anymore, because that would be an interesting conversation.
And of course, it's really scary to say no to the system.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to do on your own. And yet, if it was enough to know this information, the systems would already have changed.
Yeah.
So part of what we are trying to do in this grassroots movement is to help people to know what information is useful for them to know, how to tell the stories of action being taken, and increasingly how to make change that is more resistant. So how do we say no to the system? I think lots of people want to know that. So that's one of the themes that we have thought would be useful to people in diving more deeply. Fiona, we've also thought about doing an exhibition which pulls together stories of the past, and you have been particularly keen on that. Do you want to give people little insights into that possibility?
Well, actually, I would say probably that Siobhan is the person that has actually thought of how to bring history into the present. The work that she does very much looks at what are the stories of the past and how do those how does that help us now. I would find it really interesting to look more about how do we hold our stories inside our bodies. And what does that mean? Because of course, everything is somatic. You know, our whole story is inside us, and often talking about things isn't enough. We also need a very grounded, biological, physical way of actually resolving some of the things that challenge us in order for us to feel more alive. I was also going to, sorry, Suzanne.
No, go ahead.
I was also going to say that we're also really proud this year that we're going to be taking 8 young people back to the Fringe in a show that Siobhan has written that will be revised this year, because we think that our young people are an incredible resource and they're often maligned, as Jerry and Danny and loads of other people in here will know. And so through the creative arts, where they're able to express themselves and they're able to grow into their own careers where they tell stories, that's one of the things that Anna Malba is doing this year to support that.
So the reason we wanted everyone to have a sense of what is being planned next year is so that you can start to look forward to that, but mostly so that you know that there is a next year. There are lots of us who want to grow this movement, who want to think about how we reach more people, who want to think deeply about what are the things that we could and should be doing. And so you have some sense of the conversations that have been had now, but that doesn't have to be everything we do. Everything we do is up to us. So we want everybody who's here to feel part of this movement, to know that we are trying to grow an infrastructure that makes it possible for people to say, I am doing this. Please, can we have a network that makes more of that possible, that draws attention to it, because lots of people do things and other people may not know. So the key message to take from this part of tonight is to know that if you have ideas about what you think would be helpful to people, please jump in. We want the voices to be stretched across all of us. And so with that, can I give us another little surprise for tonight? This is our logo for the theme for next year. Ta-da! Our theme is to tell stories of hope, which our world needs, which the world of trauma needs. If we can tell those stories with a tone of hope, then people can step into the things that are scary and often overwhelming. So you are here first in seeing what our logo for next year looks like, again, made by Brett. Okay, so if we have a sense of where we're going next year and what some of us are thinking about, David, do you want to take us back into having more voices to come into the room to talk about what people might dream for that next year?
Can I just ask you to put any ideas that you have, anything you would like to see happening, any thoughts that you have, can you please put them into the chat, and we'll collect what we get back in the chat, and we'll find a way of feeding that back to you. I think there are lots of opportunities while you're doing that, while you're adding your ideas. I think there are lots of opportunities for us. I think the whole theme of next year around the stories of hope and sharing, I think that's valuable in itself. And no one's made more use of narrative than the Violence Reduction Unit, one of the great success stories in terms of Scotland's development. And they built all of that round stories, round conveying narratives that help promote understanding. So that the stories will help, undoubtedly. But maybe we should think about what other things we could do. Perhaps what we should do is mobilise around some of the colleagues in the room who've got initiatives underway to try and gain very specific changes. I know that we've got Willie French from Upstart here. They think we can make a massive difference to young people's futures by changing the formal age at which we bring young people into schooling. They are fixed on the idea of a kindergarten stage. Maybe there are moves like that that we need to rally around. Maybe there will be particular stories of hope that we'll all feel this is something we can get behind. Suzanne Scott's efforts to make parents trauma aware, that might be another initiative that we can get behind. It's about thinking not just what we can continue to do, but thinking more about what we can do together. So let's just give you 5 minutes. If you've got anything to add to the chat, put it in now. It'll be kept, it'll be recorded. And as I say, we'll find a way of feeding that back to you.
And we might even bring in the voices of people who are putting things into the chat right now to give you a chance to bring your voices in too. So we're now waiting for that flood of ideas in the chat. So Danny's come in, Kirsten's come in, Zoe. Can I just pull you in while other people are putting into the chat? Zoe, please, would you mind stepping into the room and just telling us a little bit? You've said the idea of historical stories linked to shame seems a really good idea. Would you just unmute yourself and tell us more about why you like that idea?
Yeah, hi Suzanne, thank you. I've been listening to the Witches of Scotland podcast for a few months now. I don't know if anybody else here has come across this, but Claire Mitchell and Zoe Ventatozzi wrote the most amazing book and have been producing this podcast since about 2000. Yep. Started it just before the lockdown, and they have painstakingly researched and brought together other people's research about the stories of mostly women, some men as well, but mostly women who were accused, tried, mostly through torture, and ultimately executed as witches in Scotland. And they are fighting for justice, if you like, or a better word would be recognition of the fact that all these people were wrongly, completely wrongly put to death in such horrific and brutal ways. I was listening to one recently, and the conversation was about that word justice that I just said, and then corrected myself, because justice implies that there was guilt. And actually, that what they're trying to say is there was no guilt. There was fear, and there was shame, and there were stories created out of that combination of fear and shame. And what they're also really careful to do is bring all of that history and that research and connect it to present day situations such as domestic abuse and domestic violence, and how women are still treated, largely women, but other marginalized groups as well, are still treated today. And as a sort of a way of cautioning that the past is the past, but is it so far-fetched? Like, could we find ourselves back in similar places again, which is in turns horrifying, but also stories of hope. You know, you've touched on hope there, and made that a theme, and taking the learning and seeing what we can see in front of us and learning from the past and using that so we don't end up back in similar positions. I think they're amazing. I can even wave the book if presents. Oh, I can either with my camera and my dodgy background. No, maybe I can't. I'll put a photo of it in the chat or something.
So, Zoe, your enthusiasm is fantastic, and you are absolutely right. They wrote a fabulous book. In fact, they talked about James VI, who was the king and who oversaw lots of the witches' trial. They referred to him as a trauma baby because of his own personal history, and that made him more vulnerable to many of the beliefs about witchcraft at the time. So your enthusiasm for bringing in more stories from the past is wonderful. There are lots of stories from the past that we could see through a trauma lens. The belting of children in Scotland, the labor, the labor laws and the way in which children worked in the mills in the late Victorian and Edwardian periods. I'm in Dundee. Dundee still has the highest rate of lots of outcomes of ACEs in the country, and I think that has to do with the way in which the mills created trauma for the society at the time. And so if there are other people who are interested in doing history things, I'm sure at some point Siobhan is going to come in this evening when we bring her on in just a little bit. She's really interested in history, and if other people are, that gives us a longer lens through which to think about ACEs in Scotland. So Zoe, thank you for bringing in that vote. I can see Joanna Oliver in the chat. Joanna, would you mind stepping into the frame? Lots of people may not know who you are, but Joanna's coming from London, where they also have an ACEs hub. And Joanna, if you feel able to step into this room, it's really helpful to people here to hear how the work we are doing in Scotland can help and give confidence in other places. So do you feel happy to unmute and tell us what you are gaining and the ideas you're taking away from tonight?
Oh, wow. On the spot. Piani is also here.
Okay.
And she probably would free flow more readily than me, if I'm honest. However, yeah, what I'm taking from it is, again, the resonance in spaces, you know, wherever we are, when we really zoom into ACEs and how they manifest in you know, our lived experience, that actually we're all more the same than different. So for me to kind of tune into what's happening in Scotland and listen to people, and the creativity as well, listening to poetry that kind of expresses self. I think, you know, these spaces are so necessary for us all to connect together. And yeah, as I say, just the sameness, really. I've kind of said something about the kind of intersectionality and diversity
Yep.
but actually kind of really plugging into the sameness, I think, is crucial within this. So yeah, as I say, I've been multitasking, I've been listening in, really feel really blessed to be here and part of it. So thank you. Yeah.
Joanna, thank you so much for being willing to just step into this.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with you. There is something about understanding that underpinning all of this is what it means to be human, the key things that tie us, the experiences that tie us together as humans, and certainly our core biology and the way that that is affected by our experiences. And at the same time, that the knowledge of ACEs, as we learn more about how that biology, stress system, and relationships function, that it falls into cultures and into places. And maybe we don't think enough about what the cultural context is like into which that information is falling. So I think we need both to think about our own places and belonging to those places, and then link to other places that are trying to think about what the ACEs research may mean for them. So Joanna, I'm super pleased that you were willing to step in tonight.
Thank you.
Zoe, thank you for thinking about what else we might do. And we've got lots of those comments coming in about what all of you would like to see happen. And we're going to try to organize those so that we can create a direction that speaks to the heart of and the visions of what people would like. And so with that, I'm going to start to pull us back together and hand back to David.
I think what we've seen in the chat is lots of ideas, and I think lots of common threads coming through. I think there's a general sense around that the idea of sharing stories and narratives is an important element of whatever we do next. But you've really added to the thinking, and I think we need to take a bit of time to reflect on that. I think probably what we need to do is get a few of us together just to reflect on what's come out of tonight and try and think about how we move forward. But it's the energy, it's the commitment, it's the passion. And I think critically, it's the warmth that's been in the room tonight that gives us a real foundation for moving forward. The sense that people have of wanting to belong sits so well with the ideas of connection. And I just absolutely love that. So we will look at what you've given us and we will come back to you with a step forward from that. But I think, Suzanne, we're going to take us right back to a creative end to the evening, picking up on another theme of the evening. And we're also going to link in to the work of Robert Burns. And I think it's vital, since we're talking about Scotland and ACEs, that we make that reference and we recognise that sense that comes from Burns, that we can be together, that we can share with each other for the sake of Auld Lang Syne, that we can celebrate friendship as he did in John Anderson, My Joe, and that we can celebrate the idea of equality and justice through a man's a man for all that. Although we might now want to update that and make it a little less gender specific than Burns did. But let's let that one go. Suzanne, can I ask you just to begin to round off the evening by introducing Siobhan?
You've already heard from one member of Animalba, and it is a delight to introduce a second member of Animalba. Siobhan Argyle has brought music and song and rhythm to the ACEs movement with great light and with great fun, and she winkles lots of us out of our shell to step into our creative selves. So as we turn to our last contribution of this evening, Siobhan is going to make sure that we don't leave without music and rhythm and lots of energy to take into 2026. Siobhan, it is a pleasure to say, what have you got for us tonight?
Oh man. Well, I have to say that first of all, I have an issue with Zoom because I can't actually play the piano and for anybody to hear the piano as me playing. So I have changed slightly what I was going to do tonight because
Great stuff.
you're all going to join in like in your own little boxes, okay? Because it's really, really easy. But before I come on to that, to touch on some of the things that have been spoken about tonight, the thing that I am really passionate about, which I've always suspected, but school kind of, said unless I was studying Neanderthal man, then I wasn't allowed to do any other kind of history. And quite frankly, I'm sure Neanderthal man was really, really fascinating. However, I really wanted to find out about my own history and that of a world that I just thought had contained so many stories at its very core. And now I find myself in this really incredible position where I get to do that on a daily basis, and I get to look at where we have come from and how that impacts where we are now on a much wider scale. And so I have gone down rabbit holes of William Wallace, Robert the Bruce, Mary Queen of Scots, the story of the witches, and how and the kings and the queens and what happened in our country to actually influence where we are now. And so I started running a series of heritage nights, and what I thought was, because really, like, these traditions are passed down, our stories are passed down, and that's not just for those back in the 1600s, 1700s, or whatever. This is like about us now. So actually the past and the future come together in perfect unison if we actually allow ourselves to lean into our own story as well as that of all of those who have gone before us. So when we look at Burns, I'm doing a big concert in the Lantern House on Sunday night. It's the very first time I've actually done this in a theatre setting, and it was a fundraiser for the Lantern House. And I said, okay, I don't have anything else, but what I can do is I can, put together this concert of Burns. And in all the stories about Burns, yes, he was a womanizer. Yes, he did this. Yes, he did that. He was all of these things. But actually, he had a belief that if we did not preserve our stories and our music, then they would be lost. So what Burns did was that Burns took all the music and ballads of the day and he wrote new words. And he would walk about in the morning singing repeatedly the song over and over again, fitting in the words to go with the ballad that he didn't want to lose. And he didn't want Scotland to lose. And all of a sudden, I felt an affinity with Burns that I had never felt before. And I realised that what Burns was trying to do was to really bring to the fore the fact that this is important, our heritage is important, everything is important when it comes to our history. So, and actually because while we can criticise Burns and how he lived, I refuse point blank to stand in judgment of that, because what he did was actually talk about, this is life, and yeah, I've screwed up plenty at times. And if I compare that to the stories of today, well, I find myself saying exactly the same thing about myself. So really, you have the same kind of themes which run through generations and generations and generations. And David, I was having a massive rehearsal last night for Sunday. A Man's a Man for All That was one of the songs that we were rehearsing. And I found myself with a tear in my eye at the end of it, because I actually was really taken by the words of the actual song and what that means to us in this day and age, especially where it says, and brothers will be for all that. And I think, gosh, the relevance of what was written way back is almost prophetic, because we are still singing, we're still hoping for the same thing. So we're still hoping that that basically we can join together and that we can unite and that we can be a force for good And I think that that is one of the things that as we go into a year of stories for hope, that we don't lose sight of, because it's unfathomable to think that all of us sitting here then are not part of that great collective of hope. So I'm actually going to finish tonight with a little bit of Burns, but then a song I actually wrote is one of mine. And it is going to be played on, it's actually the opener on Sunday night. And for any of you who are coming, I'm not telling you more than that. But I am going to give you a chance to star in the opener of Burns by Candlelight at the Lantern House, because you're all going to hum, right? So you're going to be the backing track, right? So because I can't do it on Zoom, then you get to hum, okay?
Okay.
Is that okay? So I'm going to give you a note that you're going to hum, okay? And I just want you to keep that in your head. And for all of you creative musical people out there, because I believe there's a song in absolutely everyone and there's music in absolutely everyone, then you can, do different notes of the same chord, okay? So like it's entirely up to you. You get to play about. And so this is the note that I'm going to get you all to hum, okay? So you're all going to do this.
Do we unmute everyone now?
You can try. You can try it, okay? So we'll see how it goes, okay? So it's a. Let's start with this, because this was Burns, and he wrote, "One night, as I did wonder, when corn begins to shoot, I sat me down to ponder upon an old tree root. Old deer ran by before me and bickered to the seas, and a cushion crewed o'er me that echoed through the breeze." And this is a song, so you're going to go. Sit a while and see the ocean swell. What stories in that ocean held, of dreams of love there in timeless thought, as the waves roll in from the sea. Sit a while and hear the ocean sing, songs of love brought to you upon the wings of the seabirds as they take to flight. And the waves roll in from the sea. Sit a while and feel the ocean here, as it carries treasures held so dear. Hope held in mind and heart, as the waves roll in from the sea.
Siobhan, thank you so much. That was just gorgeous. Siobhan, that was just beautiful. And so if we have a sense of what the creative arts is possible over Zoom, while we all manage all of those sound levels, and it sounded that beautiful in this setting, imagine what happens when we're all together in a room and we're biologically coordinated and we're thinking about how we create together a vision for a community. So with that, I'm going to start to draw us to a close. Thank you to everyone who has spoken tonight. Thank you to David, who stepped in my shoes when I was on ScotRail. And I hope you have a sense of where we might be going next year and where you bring your voice and where you hope that you fit into this network. David, do you want to bring your voice back in and say what you think we might have pulled together for tonight, ending it with singing it, weaving in all of this vision? What do you think tonight offers to the nation of Scotland?
I'm not sure what it offers to the nation of Scotland. I think what it offers to all of us who've been here is that sense of affirmation that Danny referred to early on. I think it's vital that people get a sense of what they're doing right, because we tend to focus far too much on what we're doing wrong. We need to learn lessons from that. But as I said on other occasions, if you want change, You need both traction and momentum. You need grip on the ground. You need an awareness of what your strengths are. And I think that's what we've seen tonight. I think we've seen lots of people demonstrating their strengths, be it the beauty of Siobhan's singing, be it the contributions that have been referred to by David MacArthur and others, and Davey's been back in referring to other things that he's aware of. Some of the feedback that we've had on the chat has been marvellous. I think we have a real basis for moving forward, but we need to bear in mind what Fiona talked about. We need to be a community. We live in a world where the emphasis is on self constantly, where people are self-obsessed. We now have the culture of the selfie. And what we need is the culture of the community. We need the culture of sharing. We need a sense of belonging. We need a sense of being together. We need a sense of all of us mattering to each other. We need to move away from the world that's being pushed at us, from reform, from Trump, and from so many other sources, and recognizing that in finding each other, we find the answers. And in finding the answers, we find more questions, more reason for curiosity, but also more reasons for hope. And that's the big message I'm taking away from tonight, is a message of hope. Let's have it, let's share it, and let's spread it. Thanks to everyone for the contribution that you've made tonight.
Thank you so much, and we'll see you in 2026. Thank you. Brett, we're going to count down till we close this. So if we just count down together, then it doesn't feel too abrupt. 5, 4, 3, 2. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.